we did not get responses from all of them. So the two that we have, the Rotaract Club of Negril and the Clifford Youth Club would have been the ones that we were able to make contact with.
So basically, now you're saying then that you did not only have... No, why I'm asking, because if the initial list stated that you have one club, but yet now you're saying that based on trying to reach out, you got contact for two, or two responded. So that would basically be telling us then that there was more than one club in the parish. You made contact with a few, only get response from two. But the information is conflicting, because if you have one club initially on a list.
Yeah, remember, I can't say what's conflicting because there is a list of clubs.
Which has
based
one
on
for
our
Westmoreland.
records.
Which has one for Westmoreland.
Yeah, you said there's only one active club in Westmoreland. It's your registry of centers.
So I just want clarity, because the list is saying one. So I just want to understand how it was done, because if you're saying one on the list, this would indicate to me that this is the one that you made contact with. So it would be strange to me now to see the list of the approved.
And the one active club
does it even have the one
support?
active club? That's why I just want to try to understand what you are really saying, because this would be conflicting to me. Reports that we have here.
Well, remember, the only thing I can say is that maybe the timing difference is maybe what is triggering here, because at the time when those calls would have been made, perhaps those clubs were not in place. Right?
Just a question.
That's the only explanation I can give for that.
When you make a call, in other words, you're saying you've given us a list of clubs which has one club, but then you say that you have some inactive clubs that you are seeking to call. What do you call and tell them? Are you calling and saying, would you like some support, some money to start a club?
Well,
I mean, there must be something you're calling and saying to these clubs.
Well, we are indicating, Chairman, to them that we are interested in them being revived and revamped, and we are here to provide the support. And we would have outlined the kinds of support.
I suspect that every club you call would accept support. So is it that you only call two clubs?
The issue, Honorable Chair, is whether or not we get to speak to them. Because when we get to speak to them, we can engage them. But if it is that we are not able to contact them, that is where we have the challenge.
If I might, Chairman.
This is clarity, because I do have an order, Member Darling.
Yes, I'm just wondering. I did hear the PS say that a certain amount of money was spent, and I'm just trying to steer some clarity to find out if this is it. He had a rally, I gather, that a certain amount was spent in Westmoreland. Am I correct, PS?
You are correct.
Right,
Member.
and he said that a number of persons there were there from various youth clubs. So what I'm gathering from what has happened there, and in fact, he admitted at the beginning that when he was here last, there was not structure, so that is what they've structured. But I'm gathering that from that rally, that there were persons who were there, some respond.
Member Dalrymple, please. Let me just say, Member Vaz was asked the question. I think what we're trying to do is seek clarity. Our job, our job as members of Parliament are to represent our constituents. Please, Member Dalrymple, let me just say, are to represent our constituents in seeking to just get clarity on how the Parliament's wishes are being followed. I beg you, please, let Member Vaz finish.
But I will give you. Anything wrong.
No,
yes,
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. But please, let us. Each of us will be given the opportunity. I think if each member has a line of thought and concerns, and prior to, I've heard what he says, but I'm sure that the public servants are more than capable of defending themselves.
I know you're not, Chairman, but I too want clarity. What
I'll give you all the time.
Yeah, but it's not for me. I'm just saying, when you have the members before the committee, and I understand what the member from Westmoreland is asking, I thought that our approach is to assist in getting the truth, clarity, and so if there seems, I gather from the opening statement of the PS, that he recognized that the last time he was here, the way the program was structured was not in accordance with good governance. So he had opened, he has said, look, we have looked at it, this is how we are going to do to move forward with the SDC and various members of parliament. And I gather, just listening to him, just innocently, I'm trying to help to bring clarity rather than to crucify. If he had a rally in Westmoreland, he said he spent $600,000.
Member, please. Okay, member. I don't think. Look, let Member Vaz. I think the issue that is we're trying to clarify. If we don't know what the real situation is, where the problems are, and that they have been resolved, it is going to be difficult to us to move forward. So please, Member Vaz, finish, and then we'll take the other members and come around.
I think what you're saying, Marissa, is that probably she's asking if the two clubs have just mentioned that would be getting the grant, if probably came out of the rally. I have no issue if they came out of the rally. What I'm trying to say though, Marissa,
my point is,
let me finish.
Please.
I understand what she was saying.
Please.
You're basically asking if these two came out of the rally. But what I'm trying to clarify, yes, now you have two clubs that, if they came out of the rally, yes, they are applied for the grant. What I'm trying to ascertain is that the original one, the only one that was in the parish, the only one that obviously would have contacted to try to organize this. You're telling me now that this club has not tried to apply for this same grant?
The point I'm making, member, to your chairman, is that we have an issue of timing difference. The audit was done in the summer, and by the time November came, you had these two clubs. You had these two clubs. Now, in applying for the grant, and I'm saying that you may have clubs that have been listed, but even after contacting them, it takes some time for them to put their processes together to apply for the grant. So we may have on our record that only one club applied for the grant, but it doesn't mean that there are not mechanisms in train for the other one to apply for the grant.
All right, next question. Outside of Westmoreland, I know that you had the rallies in 3 different parishes so far. All right, so outside of Westmoreland, for example, at Kingston and St. Andrew, then, who wouldn't have had a rally as yet, in what way was the information put out there for clubs to know, for example, that these grants are available? I notice you have 11 clubs who have applied in Kingston and St. Andrew. I'm not sure how many is on the original listing. But for example, how would these 11 know compared to probably the total that is there? Is it that you directly contacted these ones?
Right. So
or you tried contacting every single one and only got information from these 11?
Well, member, I would have to go by the information given to me, and what that means is that we have an active youth division with youth club assistants who make these calls and try to ferret out these clubs. Sometimes they are successful, sometimes they are not successful, but we keep trying.
But just 1 second though, but I think what we're asking for is just a general policy.
Right.
So the question I think being asked is that you have sent to us as members of parliament a list. So for Westmoreland, for myself and member Vaz who are here, there's only one club. You then indicate that you have gotten requests for 2 clubs for support, none of which are on this list, which indicates to us that there's another list that you're working with that we do not know, because you said that these calls were made out of the youth department. What I think Member Vaz is trying to see from you is, where is that other list of clubs? In other words, how did these 2 clubs come about? In other words, because we all have youth clubs here that we would like to activate.
But Chairman,
we need to know what the mechanism is.
As a PS Chairman, I would have asked for all information to be presented before me. And I would be surprised if there's another list, and I doubt that there is another list. What you may very well find is that because of the timing difference, there may be a list that has been updated over time. So there can't, in my mind, there's no conclusion that I have drawn from the information presented to me that there is in fact another list. We have said, as I indicated in my opening, sir, that moving forward, we have left this approach. We have left this approach, Chairman. We have left this approach because we recognize that that this is not an approach that was sustainable and for which we could give proper accountability. So we have left that approach, and we have now moved to a new approach, which we hope will find favor with the committee.
All right. Remember, no,
one more question. The new approach, yes, as we had suggested with SDC, and we're really happy to know that you're going that direction. Only one question, reader, your opening statement. Read the 3 youth clubs we're targeting now per constituency. Will this mean 3 new youth clubs per constituency, or you're going to use the, for example, if the SDC listing has 5 per constituency, are you going to pick 3 of the 5, or we're thinking of forming brand new clubs
in concert
outside?
with the SDC? We'll seek that guidance from the SDC and that support.
You'll see that guidance from
Yes.
the SDC. All right, so question though. Suppose a constituency has 10 youth clubs, just for example. How do we go about in selecting with 3 we're going to concentrate on, or it is not limited?
We'll be
to the 3?
supporting all of them, but what we are saying, we are speaking at a minimum.
A minimum of
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the support will be given to all of them across the board,
To all of them across the board.
as long as they're there.
But as a minimum, 3.
I just wanted to clarify if the 3 was a minimum or it was a general thing.
And that will take us to an increase in terms of active clubs over 200%.
Okay.
Because if we have 189 as against 55, that would be a big win. And we will continue to improve as we go forward.
Okay, thanks.
all right, so I'm going to move to member Dunn now. The one thing I just clarify, so just based on your statement, no funds have been dispersed to any youth club or commitments made to any youth clubs at this point in time under this program?
Recall, Chairman, that when we came here before, we had indicated that some clubs had already called and they have done what they needed to do, so there was a legitimate expectation for them to get that 30,000. So we have 33 of those clubs now.
And where are those clubs based?
We have them spread across Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Catherine, St. James, St. Thomas, St. Anne, St. Mary, St. Elizabeth, Portland, Manchester, Westmoreland, Trelawney, and
How many you have in Westmoreland?
33.
How many clubs in Westmoreland you have earmarked there?
The Rotaract Club of Negril and the Clifford Youth Club.
Member, I think every member in this parliament would be interested in seeing that list, because what you're really saying to us is that you have gone ahead and selected youth clubs already across the country to give funds to, and this has been done certainly in some areas without any consultation with the SDC or the members of parliament, and that it is being done, the methodology is still, I think, in many of our minds, somewhat suspect. So I think it would be interesting. I think you need to give us a copy of the list of all the clubs that have already been promised, so that the members of parliament here, and certainly we can send it to the parliament, so that members of parliament can look at it and so
We can do that, Chairman, but I just wanted to be clear that we did not go and select these clubs. We provided a framework in terms of our rallies to indicate to the persons.
No. With due respect, Mr. Bernard, you had no rallies in the corporate area. So how did you select them for the corporate area if you did not have a rally, if that is the case?
And I would have indicated that there was another method that we use in terms of calling through our youth club aids. And we had our youth month activities and so forth.
Mr. Chair,
I have member Don, who has been waiting patiently.
All right, PS. I just want to get to understand that based on the last sitting that we had and today's sitting, are you saying that the method that you had used, you have no revamped that method, so you have a new method? So the listing that we have here, is this as a result of the current new method, or?
No, that's the old system.
It's the whole system?
That's the old system.
All right, because, I mean, there are a number of clubs in St. Mary that I don't really see listed either. And I'm happy that going forward, that, as you said, there's going to be collaboration with the SDC and the Member of Parliament. But based on the timeline, because this should have been in train already, correct? This program should have been up and running already?
Well, the project started last year, and as I said, given the deliberations at the last committee meeting, we have in fact stopped and relooked the entire thing.
Right. So what is the timeline now in terms of the consultations?
Well, we have an operational plan, member, and it gives the different timing that we have. Certainly between September and March next year, we hope to have this new methodology rolled out.
All right, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Member Dalrymple.
Chairman, what I am comfortable with now is the fact that on the last occasion they were before us, the methodology used for the assistance to the youth clubs was certainly not satisfactory. And particularly as members of Parliament, we were all concerned that these things were taking place without our knowledge. I am now comfortable that they have accepted that that method was not the acceptable way for good governance. And what I think they have presented to us this morning, which I find satisfactory, is a new way using the guidelines, going through the SDC and making sure that when this is done, it is done within knowledge and contact with us as members of Parliament. And anything short of that would be unsatisfactory. But what I am comfortable with, which is what I think, is that they recognize that the past couldn't continue, and they have restructured, and we have a plan that is going forward. Now, I'm also comfortable with the fact that you asked the question, have they got, he said they are due to get, but he has not as yet paid out any sums. So it means that he has a new platform from which to operate, which is what we want for them to do. Thank you.
Member Dalrymple, I would say to you, though, one of the things that they have indicated is that they have 30-odd groups that were selected across the island. Sorry, am I?
33 clubs.
33.
33 clubs were promised funds.
No, and they were promised funds under the old methodology, which we still have some concerns about. I would like to hear what your position is on that. No, please.
My position on that, members, is that since they have a new platform, before dispersing any funds in any constituency, some contact must be made with SDC and the Member of Parliament for the constituency to confirm that this is the way forward. And that is what I gather from what they're saying.
Member Holness.
As it relates to let me start with, as it relates to the persons you have already promised funds, though SDC is the best place to go to gather data in terms of what exists, if we are trying to target young people, it does not necessarily equal that youth groups that have been established are necessarily known by the SDC. So if a youth group has approached you under the old dispensation and you made an arrangement to say you are going to honor the grant to these individuals, my recommendation to you is to take that listing to the SDC and say, can you go out and do an audit and re-verification of these youth groups, because I think you should make every effort to meet your commitment and obligation. Coming out of the last session, I'm actually happy to see the ministry coming back with an approach tied in with SDC, who would have always been very comfortable interacting at the community level. What I would like to get very clearly is exactly what is the budget that will be spent on this particular venture, so that we are better able to determine if we have additional youth groups that we do not see coming up as members of parliament for our various constituencies on this list, we would know to what extent we can go out and pull in some additional youth groups. Because it is a noble venture, we need to get our young people up and active and involved. And the closer they are in terms of their involvement is the better Jamaican citizens that they become. So this is wonderful, because the devil finds work for idle hands, and we don't want to keep our young people idle. So for us, it would be wonderful to give us an indication as to what is going to be the maximum budget. Can you get an additional budget if we're able to generate the information for you for the additional youth groups that exist in St. Andrew, in Westmoreland, in St. Elizabeth, in Trelawney, wherever they may be. It would be also remiss of me not to indicate that when you're going to launch a new program, it would be wonderful to find a mechanism to communicate with the various members of parliament. It would be wonderful to come to parliament and see a little note on our desk indicating that you're going to launch, this is what the program is, and so we can jump in as MPs and do our job in representing the people in our constituencies. So that by the time you come to explain in the program, at least we would be all, as members of parliament, very aware of where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Before you answer, Mr. Bernard, let me just agree with you totally and make two suggestions. One, absolutely. The first thing, you made the point about the budget, and I think these things work. Every single constituency wants to get the youth clubs re-energized. So one of the things we want to look at is if you have a budget of X, you know that you're going to divide it by parish, by constituency. How is it going to be? So that members of parliament can wrap their minds around how best to serve their constituents and those youth groups. So I think that in what Member Holness has said about the budget, I think it is critical for you to look at that budget and how you're going to drill it down so that we can better serve our constituents. And even the SDC offices will know that SDC office for Westmoreland will get 12 million and there are 3 constituencies. They know it's roughly 4 each. They will know who has more groups. You can better plan. So that's number one. The second thing I would say, Member Holders, and this I say just because we have got to, in moving forward, better inform ourselves too. I think it was unfair to say that the technocrats should be coming and saying to us that these programs, they set the programs, but they have their ministers, and their ministers sit in parliament with us, and it is a responsibility of the ministers to inform his colleagues of the programs that they are moving on with. And I think one of the concerns I've had is certainly this program. Even I have found difficulty. We've had to deal with the technocrats, but there is a ministerial responsibility for the minister to have informed his colleagues and to have set the groundwork. And to almost say, as you know, if a minister is doing a project in your constituency and does not inform you, I'm sure you would take umbrage to it. And therefore, there is a responsibility for them to engage their colleagues.
Chairman, let me apologize. The Minister for Education doesn't sit in the Parliament with us,
The
so very
Minister-
often
the Minister of
when
State
I'm
does.
speaking,
The
it's what the
Minister
Minister
of
of
State
State
does.
does. So it's really a comment for the ministry as a whole to ensure that when you have a program, you know for sure the communication is coming out of the ministry to the various members of Parliament.
But I'm
So
sure
not an
we
attack on the
I'm sure we
technocrats.
can also jolt our colleague. I think you would do well to remind.
Our colleagues watch PAAC.
All right.
Thank you very much.
But I think you can confine your response to the budget.
Thank you very much.
And what
Chairman,
the budget
I
is
think-
and how you're going
I
to
think
roll
that
it out.
very importantly, those 33 clubs that were referred to, that they will all be subject to the review through the partnership with the SDC before any funds are paid.
And the list will be given
And we will
to the
send you the
PAC.
list of those 33 clubs. And I must also indicate that we have an active quality education circle program where we update our members of parliament on educational offerings within their constituency. And the plan is based on the document, is to use that mechanism also to update and to get the feedback on the club, on the club's youth club program as well. So we have that mechanism to keep our MPs updated as well. In terms of the budget, Chairman, we have casted before us, I indicated earlier, $15,412,000, and that would have been and so that $15,400,000, but that is not. So while we are spending that, we are also using our schools. We are using our legs apprentices to provide youth aid support. So the whole program is ingested in the overall operations of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. So we have that kind of continuity.
Yes, Mr. Bernard, but I think what we need to know, you have indicated that you're going to be giving some support to youth clubs. So we would like, I think, to know what the budget for that will be, the total budget for support to youth clubs.
All right, for the minimum 189 clubs, Chairman, the budget is $6,660,000.
And those 189 youth clubs will be across the island?
3 per constituency, Chairman.
Oh, you're only going to start with
A
3.
minimum, yes.
You also have here 3 persons per constituency. I'm trying to understand.
Now, those are the youth aids.
The who?
Those are the youth aids.
Aids.
Yes.
Could you explain to us, tell us how you envisage this? In other words, who are the youth aids? How are you going to procure them? What are they paid?
All right.
Just give us an
So
idea
youth
of what the
aids-
plan is so that we can at least
Right.
better
So
oversee.
youth aids are apprentices who work through the Learning, Earning, Giving and Savings program. So they are paid a stipend per week. So they'll be trained and they'll be sent out to provide assistance to these clubs.
They will work, for example, in say East Rural. How would those 3 persons be selected, and where will they work out of? What happens? How does that happen?
Well, they are apprentices, so they would be trained in the general program.
Yeah, but someone
And they
has
would
to
be-
find the
they'll-
apprentices.
they'll-
Yeah, but
they'll-
how would they be found?
Well, we can. Yes, so they will be. They are selected to the program. We have the LEGS program, and
Yeah,
so
but
these
no, but I think all of us would like to know.
these persons would have applied for registration in the program, and they would now be trained and deployed.
Well, I don't know if anybody in here knows the program, but I wouldn't know to tell anybody to apply through a program because we didn't know this program existed. Or maybe I was left out of it, but I see all my colleagues shaking their heads.
It's LEGS O program, Chairman.
What?
LEGS O program. Yes.
No, what?
The Hope LEGS program.
She's giving a little trouble over there. But that's what you're supposed to. No, look, we're being very serious, because, Mr. Bernard, what we want is when we leave here, I think all of us in here would like to leave here with a clear understanding that you don't have to come back in September under the same problems. It's a real issue. If you are going to be selecting some persons to drive these things, what is your methodology? What's your plan?
Chairman, I think it is also strategic that we have the director for the LEGS program with us today.
Good.
So
Excellent.
I don't know. I perhaps would just ask her to just to give the committee just a synopsis of how these recruitments are done.
Included in giving us the background about LEGS, and I actually have heard about LEGS. Yes. What is very critical in the chairman's question is, and as MPs we're always concerned, again, it is a battle of representing our various constituencies. So when persons are coming into a program to be utilized and to be trained and to be sent back out to work, we are always wanting to be mindful of the selection process, especially if we are not a part of being able to identify and submit individuals to be considered, to give them legs to step.
Thank you.
Give us legs to get step, absolutely.
So, Chairman, with your leave, Mrs. McFarlane will answer.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. The Learn, Earn, Give, Save program is let us say, a modality that is used to transform youth. It underpins the HOPE program, the employment component of HOPE. It is geared at changing attitude through employability skills training, as well as to help these young persons to gain skills that they can use to further their development. Where it comes to the youth club aids, we started this discussion with beginning the score last year. As a pilot, we decided that we would identify just a few clubs, clubs, and we actually had communicated with those MPs to identify persons that in the communities where the clubs are to be trained or to be considered as these youth club assistants. With the whole redirection of the program, we are now embarking on contacting the MPs for the clubs that are to be identified. We have drafted the letter, and we are now just waiting for the proper audits to be done so that we know exactly where the clubs are, who the MPs are, so that we can approach you.
No, one second. One second. You indicated that the LEGS program, you have contacted some MPs.
Right. So there was under the old structure, some MPs would have been contacted. But what I'm saying, Chairman, is that we have now moved on.
Yeah.
And so every single MP will be contacted in the process of selecting and outputting these
So
aids.
we won't ask which MPs were collected in the first set. All right. Let me.
Yes. Miss McFarlane. Yeah. Okay. So you tried to explain the LEGS program, but what I didn't hear from you, I didn't hear the fact that the LEGS program, it's a part of the policy directive of the government of Jamaica to ensure that all unattached youth are employed in gainful employment. In fact, I would have liked for you to have indicated that LEGS is an acronym for Jamaicans to work, to learn,
Earn, give, save.
exactly, and to save. You know, so let us enunciate so that the public understands. Because I do recall in December 2016, when the Prime Minister at an award banquet, when he elaborated exactly what the LEGS program is, and it's to get the unattached youth into gainful employment where they can actually save, learn, etc. So am I correct in saying that is a policy direction to get unattached youth employed and meaningful while they're learning and saving? That's the policy direction, yes? I'm sorry, I can't hear Ms. McFarlane. I'm waiting for her to answer. Yes, Mr. Is that the policy direction, Ms. McFarlane? Yes, sir. All right, thank you so much.
Member Terry Long, I know you came in a little late. But I think what we were trying to indicate is I don't think anybody has a problem with what the programs are supposed to try and accomplish. But certainly in representing our constituents, our job is really to see that the process is done in a way that we can get the best results possible. So I think it is good that you are here to elucidate on those elements. It was pointed out before, but as has been ascertained, there were some real problems with the implementation going forward, and we're hoping that we have cleared up some of those issues. I think that every member of parliament here has indicated that going forward, you have stated you're going to do 3 clubs in each constituency.
At a minimum.
At a minimum. I think Member Holness made a valid point. We would like to see what sort of latitude can be made with that, because these are good things. I think that the selection of the persons that are going to be used, because all of us are in touch with the youth clubs. We are all having to meet with them, having to interact, and then now when you seek to go out and just start a parallel organization, so to speak, as opposed to the SDC members of parliament, all the others who are operating, it just creates a bit of confusion. So what we're asking, I think 2 things can come out of this. Some further recommendations have been given today. We're going to ask that those be taken into account. Member Holness, you have indicated that you would speak to our colleague. I think one of the things that we could ask, I think this is a program that should be presented to the Parliament so that we have an idea of what it is that we are trying to accomplish and the methodology about which we're going to do it. These things can't be just some little program happening in some corner. You walk and buck it up. It can't work like that. These things are part of the, and as I said, where they have a noble intent, let's try and keep it to that. All right, members, I think that we have taken this as far as we can go today. If you can just, not to come back, but if you can just give us a details of making those changes, that we can ensure that the program going forward will have the input of all the stakeholders. And secondly, the list of those that you have already engaged, please let it know so that we can present that to the Parliament as well, along with our report, and we'll take it from there.
Certainly, Chairman, the suggestions are taken on board, and we will output to the Parliament in short order.
All right, thank you to you and your team, Mr. Bernard. Thank you, and the consultant. Do me a favor.
Members, good afternoon again. Just asking for the chatter to end so we can move forward quickly before the chairman takes back over the seat in short order. So I just want to welcome the agencies who are present today, and I'm going to ask Ms. Murray, who is the acting PS for Science and Technology, to please introduce the team before we move forward.
Good morning, members, Chair.
Why is Ms. Morris sitting so far from us?
I'm sitting with my team, Chairman, the Science and Technology Division, part of the ministry. Members would recall last week and would have heard that the energy portfolio is now with the Office of the Prime Minister. That notwithstanding, and there were questions asked last week of agencies that would fall on the energy portfolio as well as the science and technology portfolio. So with us today is the representatives of the energy division, which falls under the Office of the Prime Minister, as well as Petrojam, right, Petrojam. With the Ministry of Science and Technology, we have representatives from the eGov Jamaica Limited, eLearning Jamaica Company Limited, and the Universal Service Fund.
Chairman, just an inquiry. Chairman, are we having NESOL today as well? Because I thought that was agreed.
NESOL is supposed to be here. I think is NESOL present?
Oh, my apologies. The PCJ is also here. My apologies. I'm not seeing one representative from NESOL is on the outside. I understand.
There's only one representative? All right. All right, members, how do you suggest we proceed?
Chairman, I saw that the two ministries did respond to certain questions that I had raised last week, and I want to thank them for the response. And I certainly just have a few follow-ups that I'd like to pose in relation to the agencies.
So members, we have here a document, the report from Petrojam, which we only got this morning, which is a very extensive, we got it half an hour ago, very extensive document. Now, the first thing that I would suggest is you have some questions of NESOL and...
Well, there were 3 sets of questions, and we have received answers to the questions raised in relation to eGov, Universal Service, and
NESOL.
And NESOL, yes.
All right. Could we take those quickly and sort of get them out, which would leave us with a little more time, and then we can determine how we proceed with Petrojam, with those issues. If we can just, Member Paulwell, we can just clarify, because you're very specific questions.
Yes, and
so
I'll be brief.
So and please take them in order. So if members, if you have any questions on the specific agency, let's just take them in order so that we can then proceed from there.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, as it relates to this report that was just had, certainly I can speak for, well, I'll speak for myself, and I'll speak for Member Holness as well, because we've had a brief discussion. But we would certainly need time. We have no idea what is in this document, and we would certainly need time to read it, peruse it, so that we can properly articulate.
No, absolutely.
So I believe that we should not even go there. So, yes.
Let me just say this: let us go through the questions we have. on those other agencies. When we get to this, I know there are some members that have some specific questions. Those that have their questions can do that, and then what I would suggest is that other members who would like more time, it seems to us that we're going to have to go through this, and I think the next sitting would be the one where we are trying to finalize everything. Speak into the... No, we're not hearing... sorry, yes.
Chairman, when we come to PAAC meetings, I believe all of us as members should be equally prepared for any discussion we are supposed to have. And so I would move that from our perspective as members, we should not be in a place where we're getting a report and there are persons who are prepared to ask questions from said report that the others have not had the opportunity to see. And I believe going forward, we had some discussions in terms of
just
our
on a point of order, though, Chairman.
We had
If the
some-
member would yield, if the member would yield.
No,
Yes.
let me finish.
A point of order.
Let
A
me
point of
finish.
order.
No, member, it's a point of
It's
order.
a point
Please,
of
we're
order.
not...
Yes, I received a document by email, emailed to every single member of this committee yesterday afternoon. So unless the member...
No, I think we're talking about two separate things. I think we're talking about... No, she's talking specifically at Petrojam. But, Member Holness, I think...
So since Member Paulwell's point of order is irrelevant, let me complete what I'm saying. As a general housekeeping mechanism, we had a private discussion, and today I am placing it for the record. Going forward, as a member who intends to contribute her full weight, I would like to be in a place, and I believe other members are of the same view, that our documents are in keeping with a pre-approved schedule of what it is we are going to be discussing, which ministries and agencies we are going to see, are in keeping with what is the requirement for PAAC in terms of us seeing the detailed plans, and I got a set this morning, for each of the ministries and the agencies, and be in a position to match that against the performance of the ministry or agency vis-a-vis their budget and plans for the year. I would like to be in a position that I carry out my responsibility as a member of the PAAC in good order and decorum. So I would move that we do need to go on a retreat for this committee so that we can all be very clear as to how we would proceed, Chairman, going forward, because I'm very uncomfortable coming to meetings that we are unprepared for. We don't know which ministry is going to be coming next week, and we get an email to say we are calling another ministry or agency, and then the documents come on our desk late. So I'm very prepared, Chairman, to deal with the questions that we had asked, because I got that document and I've been able to review. But as it relates to any document lodged on my desk on the morning of PAAC, and this is the second week that it has happened, not last week, week before last I was here, the same. It cannot continue, Chairman.
Before you say what you have to say, all right, Member Jackson, say what you have to say. I'm going to respond to...
Mr. Chairman.
Say what you have to say. Let me just, at the end, yeah, please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that what we have before us with the entities, including Petrojam, it's a continuation of last week's meeting, where a series of questions emanated from those discussions for which we sought further clarification and additional information. The modus operandi of the meetings of the PAAC and other committees of the House is that you have an entity comes before us, they come and they verbally present the answers to the question. They may also seek to provide those responses in writing also to further support what they have, that they would present verbally. So it is not inconsistent, Mr. Chairman. It is not out of order that questions asked because written supporting documents are provided. They are not dealt with until the written documents. The written documents is to further elucidate on the answers given and to provide further details that, because we don't, in these committees, we don't get a chance to go through even all of those details which are provided. So, Mr. Chairman, if we were to revert to what the member from East Rural St. Andrews is proposing, this committee will never have a meeting, right? And therefore, for the efficiency of the committee and the committee to fulfill its obligation to the Parliament and the people of Jamaica, it is incumbent upon us not to put aside the committee's work to our personal convenience when we can read a document. Many times I come here, Chairman, and I don't get a chance to read a document. I don't try to detain the committee's proceedings to facilitate my either tardiness or inability to read the information. The point I'm making, Chairman, is that the document only will support what is going to be verbally provided by the entities before us. You don't have to read the document if you don't wish to or not unable to do it. So let me just close by saying, Chairman, I am totally objecting to any effort by any member on any side to postpone the deliberation of any of the matters before us coming out of the last sitting of this committee, because I'm having a sense that that is the intention, and I'm being very explicit here, and I will have none of it, and I encourage my colleagues not to. Otherwise, we'll be failing in our responsibility. And we can stay here all day. We don't have a sitting this afternoon. This is what where I was elected to come. It's my primary job.
Member Paulwell?
I'm just hoping I can proceed.
No, let me, please, let me just,
have a strong disagreement with Member Fitz, who believes that it is appropriate. The questions that were asked are questions that we have actually received responses for. So those questions were elucidated in the previous meeting. And I'm saying that going forward in terms of how we manage our housekeeping affairs, at the end of a session, I should know exactly which ministry or agency is coming next week, and I should know what are the questions we are asking of them so that I can be properly informed. It does not make any sense for me to represent and sit here getting a document that I am receiving half an hour before a session and being told that it doesn't matter if I read it. Then if it doesn't matter, then we don't need to be here.
Member Holness. Member Holness. Let me clarify, and the members of the committee are here. You have Member Holness. There are three things that you have mentioned, and I would like to clarify. Number one, in May, based on discussions we had, the agenda, the schedule went out, and we all signed off on the schedule. If you look at the schedule, the first ministry on the schedule was Economic Growth and Job Creation, and the second one is the Ministry of Science, Technology, Energy. What had happened is that the Ministry of Economic Growth wrote to us a month ago indicating they would not be able to attend because they were going to the CARICOM and they had to give support to the Prime Minister. It was brought to the meeting. It was then decided that the Ministry of Science, Technology and Energy would be brought. Member, yes. It was, member, you were not here. That's why I'm being very clear to explain to you. Please, if you would just listen, you will understand. So the Ministry of Science, Technology and Energy was asked to come. So there were two elements of what they were to do. Now, at this, member, please, at the same time, we were dealing with the issue of Petrojam. Petrojam was asked some questions. If members will remember, we took 1 week off, as we do each month. The following week, we had a training session, so we did not meet. So for 3 weeks, we did not meet. And when the ministry, when we met last week, was the first they were coming back, we were told on coming to the meeting that the general manager was unable to attend because a family emergency. What happened is that when the meeting was held, we had no report. So we took a verbal report and we were promised the report by the end of the week. All of us have received the report this morning. And remember, therefore, the second point I would make is your statement of some having responses and others not. We all receive the reports and statements at the same time. That's point number 2. Point number 3, no, I am explaining it to you, member, because you were not here last week. Therefore, I know you're catching up. No, member. Nothing could be further from the truth. The third point I'm making is that at the last meeting, Member Powell asked some questions. The questions he asked were of 3 of the ministries that fall, 3 of the agencies that fall under the ministry that we are currently seeing. The point I just made is that given the situation we're in now, where we possibly only have 1 more sitting of the committee, that, well, like you, we could go on and have more. So if you would like to move that, I'm sure we would all agree. However, the point is this, that I indicated that if Member Paulwell would like to ask his questions and we can take them and get them out of the way, the only issue left would be the Petrojam issue and the committee could complete its deliberations. Member, I think that it is very clear what it is, and I do not want us to get caught up in side issues. We have the technocrats here, and it is important for us to not waste their time while we're having sort of just internal disputes among ourselves. So with that, Member Paulwell, I indicated to you, if you, which agency would you like to start with, sir?
Again, just some follow-up questions. Firstly to Nessel.
All right, could you, no, the reason I say that, Member Paulwell, is if you are going to ask Nessel, I would say to members, when you complete with Nessel, if members have any questions to Nessel, please indicate it at that point, finish with them, so that as we finish with the agencies, we can release them if there are no other issues that we would like to move on. So, could you indicate who is here with us from Nessel? Oh, there. Could you test and see if the microphone works down there, please?
Testing, yeah.
Yes, okay. Could you just introduce who is leading the team?
My name is Carolyn Warren. I'm the managing director.
Yes.
Anthony Brown, Chief Engineer.
All right, excellent.
Kirk Barton, Project Engineer.
Okay.
Angela Prendergast, the Director of Finance.
Excellent. Okay, so with that, Member Paul?
Yes, Chairman, I did get a response as to the job functions of Mr. Lawrence Pommels. As a follow-up, does this function or his position allows him to be a signatory to any of the accounts at Nessel?
Yes, it does.
Yes, who are the signing officers at Nessel?
Signing officers are the managing director, the chairman of the board, the director of finance, and the chief engineer. Mr. Lawrence Pommel signed on the account because he acted as a chief engineer when the chief engineer was on vacation leave.
So during the period after the act, after his acting period, he reverted to being a non-signing officer, or he continued?
He continued.
On what basis did he continue to be a signing officer? And by the way, what are the limits of the signing authority in relation to that role? Are there any limits?
No, there are no limits.
So he could sign for $100 million?
We don't write checks for $100 million. But if we did, it's two persons who sign on the account. We have A signers and B signers. Mr. Pommels was a B signer, so he could not sign a check by himself. Nobody can sign a check by themselves.
Yes. I'm still not too clear, though, that the chief engineer having returned, why would you maintain the additional signatory to your account?
It was taken to the board. The board was the one who made the decision that he be added, and unfortunately, it was not done in time. It was not done. He was not removed.
You have answered a question in relation to the Silk project, and yes, he was not removed. Yes, that's the understanding. Just for clarity, he wasn't removed and he continued to be a signatory.
Yes, he continued to be.
Because the chief engineer was on vacation. And then he continued to sign and the board asked that he be removed?
No.
Let's just be clear. The board recommended that he be added in the temporary capacity while the chief engineer was absent.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, you said in terms of the removal, it wasn't done in time. Was there any official requirement that he be removed once the chief engineer retook his post or place?
No, as I said, it should have been done, but it wasn't done.
And how long has the chief engineer been back in office? Since that time?
7 months.
Yes. There are two projects that I understand that he might have been involved with. The first one is a $50 million project known as Silk. And the second one, even though I did get from USF a denial, but I gather that he is also involved with a project in relation to the Universal Service Fund operating from NESOL to enable the establishment of solar equipment and facilities where community access points are located. Can you confirm whether that is so? Whether or not that is so?
With respect to the Silk project, Mr. Anthony Brown, the chief engineer, he's a leader for that project. Mr. Lawrence Pommels was a supervisor. With regards to the solar project, Mr. Lawrence Pommels has nothing to do with that project.
And when Mr. Brown was on leave, who would be in charge of the Silk project?
Mr. Lawrence Pommels would be in charge of the Silk project when Mr. Brown was on
So
leave.
just to be clear that during the time when he was acting for Mr. Brown, he was the person in charge of the Silk project.
Yes, he was.
How long was the leave period?
Seven months was the leave period.
Is that the same 7 months subsequent to the leave period that Mr. Pommel continued to be able to sign? So is that a total of 14 months?
Right, yes. He was put on when Mr. Brown went on leave, and he continued to sign after.
Please, hold on. Member, one second. Member Paul, will you finish?
No, not at all.
No, please, allow the member to finish.
Yes. So, Ms. Warren, I just want to be clear.
Member Terrell.
You said no in relation to the Universal Service Fund project. was that a project that NESOL operationalized?
NESOL and the Universal Service Fund is a joint partnership. Mr. Pommels was not involved in that project. We took on a engineer to work on that project, to spearhead that project.
That engineer that you took on, did that person have signing authority at all in relation to the project, and how were funds disbursed under that project?
That person had no signing, when you say signing authority, if when a project is finished, when a site is finished, that person will have to sign that they have gone there and the work is done.
When I speak about signing, it's only in relation to money, to
No,
funds.
no signing authority.
All right. What is the value of that project?
The value of that project, the full value is $118 million.
How much of that have you dispersed so far, spent so far?
Member.
So far, we have spent approximately $50-something million. We have received $87 million from the Universal Service Fund. We have the project was for 28 sites. We have completed 19 with 9 to go.
Did you supply us with a list of those sites? And probably you could?
I could. You didn't ask for it, so we didn't supply it. But we have it here. We can leave it with you.
And the contractors who are involved with that?
Sure, will do.
It's very important that we get that information.
Yeah.
In relation to the Silk project, how much have you spent under that project to date?
Under the Silk project, we have spent $47.1 million, and we have completed 9 extensions.
These were projects that you subcontracted out to people to do?
Yes, all our projects are subcontracted out.
And who are involved in the selection of those contractors?
The engineers, the construction department, those are the ones who are involved in that.
I want to be clear on this. How do you procure contractors for these projects?
Contractors are procured. We have a database with the contractors who...
Sorry, for the Hansard, could you just identify yourselves so that they know who is speaking?
Oh, Anthony Brown, Chief Engineer.
Yes.
There's a database with the contractors. And from that database, we would have selected contractors from that database.
So during the period when Mr. Pommels acted, he would have been the one to select from the database those contractors?
I'm not in a position to say.
Who is in a position to say?
Yes, Mr. Pommels would have used that database.
Mr. Chairman, I think...
Yes, go ahead. You want?
I'm fine so far, until we get to the next.
Member Terrellon, you had wanted to say something?
Your mic, Mr. Chairman. Mic. It was working fine.
No, use the other one. The light is coming on, but it's not.
Thank you, member. And again, just because I've heard the name, and just so we're all clear, this Mr. Pommels that you speak of, is this the same Mr. Pommels who was first temporarily employed as far back as 2011 and was made permanent in March 2012?
Yes, that's the same Mr. Pommels you speak of.
Okay, so he has been working with the ministry, or certainly with certain responsibilities as relates to engineering, certainly for the last, 7 years or so?
7 years, yes.
So he has the experience and he's competent?
Yes, he is.
All right, thank you.
And just in relation to that point, when did Mr. Pommel start to work as engineer? Because I believe that when he was employed in 2011, it was a totally different position. So probably you could indicate to us when these promotions started, and probably also you could indicate the qualifications.
Okay, Mr. Pommel started as a construction/house wiring supervisor in 2011, house wiring and construction supervisor. In 2011, with a diploma from the University of Technology in electrical engineering, and he's also pursuing a Bachelor of Science degree in that. Electrical engineering.
Did you say he has a Bachelor's of Science, or
No,
he's pursuing?
he's pursuing, yes.
All right, so what he has is a diploma.
Yes, he does.
From University of
Technology.
Yeah, and just to be clear though, what are the requirements for that position that he's in now?
The requirements, if you're referring to the chief engineer being able to act as chief engineer, the requirements for the chief engineer is a bachelor's in electrical engineering, but there's precedence for this because the current chief engineer was appointed in March 2013, and he received his bachelor's in September 2014 because of years of experience. He was capable.
Let's just ensure that we get you very clearly. You're saying that a bachelor's is the requisite qualification, and Mr. Pommel was only acting but still had the requisite qualification of the present chief engineer?
No, the requisite requirement is a bachelor's.
Came in with the same qualification as the other came in with, but
right.
The current chief engineer has matriculated now up to having a bachelor's. And Mr. Pommel is currently pursuing the bachelor's degree.
Yes, member.
Members, just to say to you, and I think it's something we have to kind of look at, is we have seen a number of cases coming before us of persons who are acting or being put in positions where it's questionable how the qualifications and whether they meet the requirements of them. And I think one of the things that we should seek to do, members, going forward, is a recommendation, or when we do make the recommendation, to really seek to make these qualifications less subjective than they seem to be. In other words, I have no problem if, for example, the qualification for a chief engineer is that you must have a bachelor's. Then I think that goes without saying. Now, if there's a situation where the chief engineer is going on leave, and there is a need to have the deputy who has a diploma but is doing the work and has experience, then that is something that can be seen. But I think what we have to do is codify these things. In other words, it must be in the established order that these things can be done. It can't just be, because quite frankly, if something were to happen, electrical fire because of something, I don't know what could happen, you could be left as a government, left out on a limb. I think this situation and some of the others we have seen is something that we should make a recommendation to the cabinet secretary, that I think that some of these posts and qualifications, whether they're established qualifications, because we have one that has come before us of someone who got a job where the advertisement for the job made one very specific qualification. They got the job without it. And we have here a situation where there's some, I wouldn't say ambiguity, but there is certainly, I don't necessarily have a problem with it as it stands, but I think that we have got to ensure, certainly in the government service, that the establishment, that we have a very clear and transparent and open sort of established order that we follow. And I think that we wouldn't be able to say to the technocrats here because they would fall under that situation. But certainly, we as a committee going forward, I think we need to seek to recommend to Cabinet Office that they look at strengthening the structure a bit than what it stands. Member Terrell?
Yeah.
No, I think.
Mic check.
There you go.
I will not be silenced, Mr. Chairman. So the conspiracy with the mic.
No,
Mr. Chairman, as it relates to what the representative from NISAL have indicated, I have no difficulties what she's indicated. She's indicated that someone got a job, was confirmed in the position in March 2012, and that individual held a diploma in a respective field. She then indicated that that person went on to pursue the bachelor's, and whilst doing that, that person was acting. So it's not a situation where someone got a... In other words, I don't want any report to confuse the issues or to try and obfuscate them, when what is clear is that an individual was acting, an individual with some 7 years experience was acting in a particular position. And I also want all members here to note what she also indicated, that back in 2013, the person who was appointed in 2013 only had a diploma but went on to complete the bachelor's in 2014, and she indicated there was clear precedent for that, so that there was nothing wrong with the person acting being so qualified.
Member Terrell, we're all in agreement.
Hold on, please. Member Terrell, I know you take your job as a translator very seriously, but please, I'm just trying to say to you that let's move on to more serious matters. I'm saying to you that right now, what has come to us as members is the fact that there is within the structure, and I think our job in looking at government efficiency on both sides, I think a recommendation coming out at the end of all of this is that the cabinet secretary needs to look at some of these things just to strengthen the structures. It helps all of us, and quite frankly, you know, when you look at it, you may not be able to have two engineers, and therefore if the engineer goes on leave and an acting person is taking up the post, but these things must be put into the regulations to guide them and to protect them as well. So I'm just saying that coming out of this, it is something that we are going to have to look at. All right, I have Member Phillips and Member Campbell, and Member Stewart.
Chair, thank you. There's a question on the position that Mr. Pommels had was left in, and the responsibility of the chief engineer. Are they two of the same? And would Mr. Pommels then report to the chief engineer, or he reports to the general manager?
The position he reverted to, he reports to both the chief engineer and myself, and the chief engineer reports to me.
But in your accepting his employment as the operations engineer as such, in it states that he reports directly to the general manager. So once the chief engineer came back from leave, did he report any at all to the chief engineer? And secondly, the projects that would go through Mr. Pommel's department, how much was spent through that department compared to? Because there seems to be two parallel departments working in an entity, working with one budget. And so what is the spend going through and projects going through Mr. Pommels compared to that would have gone through the office of the chief engineer?
I do not have that information because it wasn't asked for. I will go and get it and get back to you on that.
And the reason for my question is that it would seem as if all that he would have been doing as chief operating engineer would have been the same responsibilities as that of the chief engineer. So did any of those programs revert back to the chief engineer's department?
I'll have to check on that and get back to you with that. I don't have that information because
but you are the general manager, so I would expect that you would have the information on what would have been reverted back to from Mr. Pommel's office.
We do many projects. When the chief engineer, when Mr. Pommels was acting, when the chief engineer returned, there would be things in progress. So you'd have to continue with that. So as I said before, I will get that information to you.
The chief engineer is here. Can he answer the question, please?
Could you repeat that for me, a member?
The question that I'm asking is seeing that, looking at the responsibilities of Mr. Pommel's office or department, would have taken in all of the responsibilities that would have come through your department. And the question I'm asking is, what would have been the spend? If you can't give me that now, then I'll await that response at a later date. Coming through Mr. Pommel's office compared to your department, and would have some of the responsibilities that Mr. Pommel's took on in your absence, was it reverted back to your department?
Not at all.
So what responsibilities you have had since you have been back?
What I'm given to do.
And that is what I'm trying to ascertain. What is it that you have been given to do?
What have you been given to? Repeat.
Yeah, I'm waiting an answer. What is it that you have been given to do?
The same pole line extension, also area responsibility. When I'm given that to do, I exercise it with my utmost responsibility and accountability.
And how many of those projects have you executed since you've been back? It hasn't answered my question, but how many of those have you been given then since you've been back? It's a vague answer that you've been given there.
I can furnish you with that report, member. I'll have to check and furnish you with that report.
And remember, if you yield for 1 second, just yield for 1 second, member.
For the benefit of those of us here at the committee, in asking the question, it doesn't make sense to give us answers that makes it so vague that we're really not getting an answer. Are you back in your substantive post as you know it? And a yes or no to that question would help us very clearly, because we are not so sure how much pole lines you were working on and how much wiring was done prior and currently. So what we really want to know, the essence of the question is, are you back in your substantive post since you came back 7 months ago as chief engineer at Petrojam? At Nessol, sorry.
Yes, I am back in my substantive post.
And do you have the same amount of responsibility that you had before you went on vacation leave then? That since the question seemed to be vague before.
My understanding is that Mr. Pommels is doing work, and I am doing work as well.
let me ask the GM.
No, hold on.
What is the department that Mr. Pommels is in charge of? What is the amount of staff that he's in charge of?
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, yeah.
If I may answer. Projects, when we do projects, the chief engineer is in charge of those projects. Silk came on, so there was additional work. So Mr. Pommels was given additional scope of work. When Mr. Brown, when the chief engineer went on leave, he was sent on vacation leave because throughout the organization, about 7 people were sent on vacation leave because there accumulation. Right. And there are persons who had more. My dear friend here, the project engineer, went on what, 200 days? Right. So we had to sort that out. Mr. Pummels was in charge of the department. When the chief engineer came back, there are certain projects that were ongoing. I can give you an example. For example, Grange Barrett Hall. Mr. Pummels would have to continue along with Mr. Brown to do those projects. As I said before, the information that you need regarding the spend that came through when Mr. Pummels was in charge, and now that Mr. Brown is back, I will give you that information because I don't have that with me today.
All right.
Because it was requested before.
One second, members. Thank you, Ms. Warren. That you have given a little clarity. We were getting a little down. Members, if I may, I'm having a difficulty because I keep hearing mention of this silk project, and I have no idea what we're talking about. You mind just so we have an idea of what it is?
Okay, silk, and it is SILC, not SILK as I see in the media.
Yeah.
It's street lighting, installation, loss reduction, and community renewal.
Hold on. Street lighting, that's S.
Loss reduction.
So that don't silk. Oh, so street.
No, installation, sorry.
All right, installation. All right. That would be installation of
pole lines and house wiring.
Like Egypt.
Like Egypt lane that we just did for you.
Go.
That we just did for you. Yes.
Street lighting implementation. Go on. So I'm under silk?
No, you're not under silk.
Dear, if
you're
you
under
had
the
told
GOJ.
me, I would have dropped under silk tomorrow. Anyway, go on. Street lighting implementation.
Installation, loss reduction, and community renewal.
And community. What's that? What does that mean?
Okay. It is a project that to benefit communities. The total budget is $328 million.
Wow.
It's supposed to go into the communities and take unattached youth. So the community renewal part would be where we would train the unattached youths in minor electrical things that they could do it themselves, for example, and for like bushing and stuff like that.
So,
we didn't get there. We didn't get there. We
you didn't start?
No, we only got $50 million, $20 million in cash and 30 in material through the EEIF fund, through the OUR. And with that fund, it's only for infrastructural work. So we could only complete the pole line part of it for those nine communities.
Silk, the only thing you have done so far is the pole line.
The pole line for 9 communities.
And you have done work where?
We have done work in Lawrence Field in St. Anne, Christian Penn, Christie Drive, Unity Heights, Riverside, Lethe in Hanover,
So how you
Heights.
get onto that program though? Is you selected?
I came on and I joined.
No, meaning, but silk, in other words, if you're doing these, because some of us have installation, like me.
Yes, but right now, the project is on hold because we have no funds.
Okay.
How you select those companies?
Yes, but the selection...
The selection was done in, I think it was March 2016, before I joined. I have the minutes to the meeting of those who were there.
Okay.
And these areas were chosen. I inherited them.
And to date, the silk project has spent some money?
47 million out of the 50.
47 million?
Yes.
Okay. Member Phillips, sorry for dropping in, yes.
I just want to go to your projects. In your report that you sent, you have here over the 2-year period a total of 174 easement, which is expansion through construction of pole line, and 16, so that's about 28 by my rough calculation, and 16 lighting ceremonies. How many projects do you have that have started but yet not completed prior to 2016? Do you know that figure? What's her name? Ms. Warren?
Would you repeat for me how many projects we have started?
How many projects that have started prior to 2016 that still have not yet been completed?
We're counting it. Member.
And what are, so you have 16 projects that started 2015 then, but yet you have started and completed what, 28 plus 16 lighting, 32. Is that so? Of these that you have put here in your report as completed projects, the bulk of these would have started in 2016? Or all of them?
No, all of them would not have started in 2016.
How many of these would have started in 2016?
Oh God. We'll check, and we're checking.
While she's checking on that, Chairman, she answered a question and I didn't get the errors. Madam, you said that the areas that were selected in 2015?
Early 2016. 2016. March, I think. I think it was March. Give me the sorry.
All right, members, just to say, Member Phillips, as usual, we're going to try and end at 1 o'clock today. As usual, our committee.
Chair, I'm sure we
try
can
and
go off.
finish.
Oh, okay.
All right, and what I would do is, so I'm going to try first to finish up with Nesal, and I think what it's going to mean is that, as we had agreed on before, just to be clear, next week, Tuesday, we had said 2 o'clock, that because of the training session, that we would attempt to do it and see if we can complete once and for all. And at least that would give us a time. Sorry, next Wednesday, my mistake, next Wednesday. All right, so Member Phillips, I'm going to let you.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on the answer. And the reason being why I'm asking, Chair, is that it would be interesting to know how many new projects that was started in 2016. Because I'm speaking of a project that I know of certain in my own constituency that started in 2015. Second half of 2015. Poles were planted, wires were installed, but yet still, since the general election of 2016, nothing has been done on it. Persons start stealing the wire. I had another one which was just completed because of making up some noise, where they stole the wire 3 times from that project. And just to get it, it was 80% completed, but could not get them to move on it.
Yes.
So it would be interesting to know how many projects, and she said 16 prior to, that have not yet been completed. What is the cost of the inputs for these 16 projects that we have left them out there, but yet still started new projects in 2016 without completing, and the location of these 16 projects? A second thing that I would want some information on is what was spent in Southeast St. Mary during the local government election. I see here where Crooked River is here, but there was also work done in Epsom and Dover during that period of the by-election in Southeast St. Mary. So if I could get that information also, Chairman, because you know, the project that has not yet been completed, I gave from my CDF $2 million to Nestle REP to initiate that project. When I approached the minister about it a few months ago, the minister's response is that I should just give him $6 million more to complete it out of my CDF. It would be interesting how much of these projects that they have received CDF and how many of them that they have done 100% the cost of Nestle.
Yes.
And secondly,
I'm sure that's an easy listing to get.
So, Chair,
Right.
I hope next week, Ms. Warren, we can get that report.
Well, what we could do is just ask for the information, and then, member, if you have concerns, we can follow up on that. No, I have Ms. Warren wants to respond. No, member. Please, member.
No, it's in tandem. I'm sorry, with respect, if you'd allow me, Mr. Chairman, it's in tandem.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So in regard to what Member Phillips has indicated, and since he indicated that, to the best of his knowledge, projects such as in his constituency were started in 2015, so then perhaps it would be prudent for her to indicate what were the projects that were approved in 2015 as well as the new projects that were started in 2015. So we get a more holistic idea. Because if one member is saying, oh, I had projects in 2015, but therefore, because I understand, Mr. Chairman, that you had a project that was completed as you indicated as well. So it would be very useful to get the 2015 approved projects as well.
Member.
Chairman, I don't want to go down that road.
Yes, please, member.
We keep arguing at PAAC meeting that our remit is and our responsibility. Right. The rules require, Member Terrelong, that our focus is on the current, this year's administration of the budget, and we need to just pinch ourselves and be continuously reminded. Chairman, when I made my intervention earlier, it wasn't as it related to Petrojam. I realized that persons presumed that was my thinking. No, it is as it relates to our general course of operating. I want to come to PAAC meeting and function in keeping with what is required. I want to be able to start delving into some of the plans and how the various ministries and agencies have operated and executed according to these plans, and not just get distracted into frivolous questions going along the way and going back all over the place. If we do that, we're going to end up in a place where every single meeting I will be demanding that I get a report that started from the last government right through to this government, because in everything I do, I have to make the comparison in terms of how we have administered. So
I'm hopeful that Member Terrelong has heard your words. Members, please, it's 4 minutes to 1. And just for clarity, because Member Terrelong in 2016, the question was asked, when was the SILK program begun? She said March 2016, so they just simply asked that.
I'm sorry, with respect, Mr. Chairman, I have no difficulty with what member has indicated.
No, Member
if we're doing
please,
this
Member
financial
you
year, then we're doing this financial year. We're not doing 2016 financial year, and if we're going to be asked to look at 2016 financial year, well, then I'm going to stand by my statement. The present financial year is either we're doing 2018 into 19 or 17 into 18, etc. This has nothing to do with 2016. And if somebody's going to go outside of 18, 19 and talk about 2016, then I want to know what prevailed in 2015 too.
No, please, members, I think if you were listening clearly, Mr. Terrelong, if you were listening, Member Phillips simply made a statement that there were some projects that were not completed, and he has concerns about them because the work that was done, wires were left, etc. So he has asked to clarify how and what were left out. So please, let's try and work at one on this. And just for the record, and we have the technocrats here with Nestle. And just to say, the project that I was speaking about, Egypt, is a project that I... Come, members, please. Members. Members, please. Ms. Warren, as I was saying to the members, I approached NESAL last year about a project and gave some CDF on it, and they have worked well and almost completed the project. So I was really alluding to the fact that I was very happy that that project is well underway. I would have liked to have gotten some of it under silt so I didn't have to spend any money, but I'm happy that what was done was money well spent. And I simply, I mean, any member here, it has been a very worthwhile function for me. But members, we're approaching 1 o'clock. And what I would like us to suggest, I don't know, there's some information, Member Phillips, that you have asked of NESAL. You can just tidy up with the clerk. What I would say to NESAL is I don't necessarily believe they need to come back unless there are some other issues that come up. We can make contact with the clerk if needs be. But members, what I would suggest is that we, in keeping with taking what we have here, a lot to digest, that next week, Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we convene and take it from there.
With the list that they have provided for the house, not the house wiring, but the extensions. They've just given the name of the communities. Can they just list the name of the parishes or the constituencies that they're in?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, members, no, let me apologize. Let me apologize to the representatives of PCJ, Petrojam, I think Universal Access Fund, and eGov and e-learning. We were not able to get to them today, but members, we're hoping that next week when we meet, that we will try our best to complete at 2 o'clock next week, Wednesday. We will meet to finalize. So members, with that, I would like to thank those that attended and thank the members and the Parliament. Well, I didn't know if they were necessary.
There's a little niggling question I have for NESAL that I heard the answers, but they don't really sit well with me. Just a little clarity. It won't take long. Ms. Warren, this issue of the signing authority with Mr. Pommels in the absence of the chief engineer. What I heard was that he became a signing officer while the chief engineer went off on that 7-month leave. The chief engineer returns, because bear in mind that Mr. Pommels went on in order to ensure you have ease in getting your check signed. The chief engineer returns, and given that Mr. Pommels was only inserted on a temporary basis, given the return of the chief engineer, why did he continue as a signing officer? That's one. And two, what was the extent of his signing function thereafter the return of the chief engineer? And third question, did he continue signing up to the time of his arrest?
I want to add a question to Member Jackson's question. Not only did he continue signing, have we started a process of auditing what was done by Mr. Pommel, particularly as it relates to the 14 months that he was capable of signing?
Thanks very much, colleague. That was very useful addition. The other question that I have in respect to this signing, and you can understand, Ms. Warren, why I would have a particular interest. can you, not now, but subsequent meeting, can you provide for us the contracts that Mr. Pommels exercised the signing authority over from the period that he commenced having the signing authority to the time of his arrest?
Yes, member, I can provide that, but I can only provide it after we receive the documents back from the Financial Investigation Division. They have all those documents.
Have all of those.
Right.
All
so
of
I will furnish you with that as soon as we get it.
But one other last question I have, Ms. Warren, for you. Much of these projects that you have spoken of and is contained in the report, those in the silk and other GOJ projects, because there's two sets of projects you execute. The silk, which is a special project, and the routine GOJ projects. I take it that those GOJ projects are executed through contracts?
Yes, they are.
A variety of contracts, right?
Yes, yes.
How are those contracts awarded? Both under the GOJ project and on the silk. What is the process of selecting the contracts? So you just deal with it then?
Chairman, just a point before this last question is answered. If it is that a financial investigation and audit is being carried out, I am of the view that it really would not make sense to take those contracts to us here at Parliament. We are not necessarily either, I won't say we're not necessarily equipped, but I would believe that the financial investigations and audit would do a far more in-depth analysis of those contracts and whether or not they were executed in the best way. And I think it would be a duplication of efforts for them to necessarily take all the contracts signed by Mr. Pommel here for us. So for me, once it is that financial investigation and an audit is taking place, that basically covers the duty. And what we would like to see is the report emanating from that investigation.
Until the report comes. Yeah, we need a report. Members?
No, I hear. By the way, which are the investigating agencies at NESL now?
The Financial Investigation Division visited NESL and took some documents which they now have. We have nobody at NESL right now.
The FID came in and took documents. That's the only investigative.
That's the only investigative body that came there.
No audit is being done?
No audit is being done right now.
No audit is being done?
No.
Okay. No, I don't know. No, if any of the, like AG is at Petrojam too, while there are other investigations going on. So I was just curious to know if in addition to FID, but just FID.
Just FID, sir.
So the questions, the information regarding those contracts and so forth, they would be contained in those files?
Yes, they'll be contained in those files.
Okay, in that case I will defer. So upon the return of those, then you will, because you don't have any audit going on, so, okay, so my question, this still stands upon the return of your documents from FID.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and just to repeat, I want the contracts, the list of the contractors, and the process of selecting those contractors in your organization. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Member Hornes.
Chairman, before we go, again, just in keeping with our obligations to be properly prepared, if there are any questions that members have as it relates to eGov, I believe NESL would not be back next week, Petrojam, USF, please submit those questions between now and the end of the week well, I think the end of the week is tight. Please see if you can submit those questions by tomorrow so that the relevant agencies are in a position to properly prepare themselves to come next week for responses as we go on recess, and we would need to basically come back off to call persons in if we're not properly prepared. So we would really want to be absolutely prepared. We have gone over the answers for the questions asked prior, and we just want to make sure if there are any members, throwing it out to all members, if you have any additional questions, please submit same so that the relevant individuals are properly prepared for us for next week.
Member Honest, your point is well
I'm
taken.
compelled to say to my colleague, I don't think that we are unreasonable. If a question is posed, even the day before, and the agency says it is unable to provide the answer the following day, our reasonableness will appreciate that time is needed. So, no, but it is not expected that if you get the question late, you must have the answer at the next sitting if time is required to sufficiently provide the answer. So we are generally reasonable. I just want my colleague to know that our colleagues are not generally unreasonable.
Not at all. Thank you, Member Jackson. Thank you, Member Honest. Your points are well taken, and the clerk has taken note of the suggestion that you made, and she will act in that regard. It's just left for me to express my sincere thanks and appreciation on behalf of the committee members to NESOL, eGov, Petrojam, and Universal Service Fund. Thanks for coming. Thanks for adding clarity. And we will return next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. The motion is in order. So move. Thank you. Thank you, members. Members, remember the meeting with the clerk, those persons who were so assigned to meet with Ms. Bailey. Clerk to the House, Mrs. Cook. Meet with Mrs. Cook. Sorry.
Designed to increase the safety of you, our citizens. If you have